The new Pinnacle weapons for Season 8 are Edgewise, Exit Strategy, and Randy's Throwing Knife. Except they're not Pinnacle weapons, they're ritual weapons. So what's a ritual weapon? A ritual weapon is basically the new Pinnacle weapon. Pinnacle weapons being guns like Breakneck, Mountaintop, 21% Delirium from seasons past that were most of the time good, and all of the time having a unique functionality. We're going to talk about the weapons from Season 8 first, and then we'll talk about my thoughts on the change from Pinnacle to ritual weapons. The first weapon we'll look at is Edgewise from the Vanguard. You need solar kills, you need machine gun kills, and you need something else that you'll probably get done before the other two. Edgewise, along with the other weapons, have perks that you can select. You can pick either Field Prep or Feeding Frenzy, and you can pick either Rampage or Demolitionist. It is a high rate of fire machine gun akin to 21% Delirium. Obviously, the main competition of this weapon is 21% Delirium based on RPM, but you can also factor in Hammerhead to this comparison since it's just a really good machine gun. So far, I haven't seen anything that would overwhelmingly say that Edgewise is a better option than Delirium, except for the amount of reserve ammo it can hold when you have Field Prep, and maybe for Demolitionist. 437 rounds for Edgewise with Field Prep and no reserve perks, 389 for Delirium, a difference of 48 shots or about an 11% increased capacity. Edgewise also has flexibility, allowing you to spec for mass destruction via Feeding Frenzy and Rampage, or allowing you to grab Demolitionist to enhance a specific character build you might be going for. Where Delirium shines is in its overflow and killing tally bonuses, allowing to maintain a damage bonus that lasts until you reload. When you can fire 200 bullets without stopping, that's a lot of killing power. For PvP purposes, I'm going to say use neither and just stick with Hammerhead. It has the right balance of RPM to damage, it's easy to control, it still murders from miles away, and gets more value out of a power brick in terms of how many shots you actually get. When it comes to PvE, however, I think it really depends on what you're doing and what your build is. Any grenade-based builds are likely to use Edgewise, but if you need raw killing or ad-slaying power, Delirium seems like the play. If you already have 21% Delirium and don't want to kill about 5 to 6 hours grinding strikes, then I would say you're probably not really missing out on too much. If you don't have either, but you have a Hammerhead with a decent roll and you don't feel like grinding strikes, then again, you're not missing out on a ton. But if you have neither of those things and are looking for something solid, then Edgewise is not too bad of an option. It is by far the easiest of these Season 8 weapons to go grind for. You can do it by yourself. In fact, I would encourage doing it by yourself instead of with a good team so that you're not competing for kills. Strikes are pretty chill, and if you grind on a day when it's heavyweight, you can really cruise through the process. Next up is Exit Strategy, which is one of the best themed weapons that has ever come out in Destiny. It is perfectly designed for Gambit considering the perks on it. Underdog or Threat Detector in the first column, and Swashbuckler or Surrounded in the next. Gambit is many enemies in a tight space basically all of the time. What a well put together weapon. Two problems. Number one is how long it takes to get this gun. The first two objectives aren't as big of a deal as the final objective, where you'll need to kill enemies and send blockers. Sounds easy, until you realize you'll be progressing this step about 2 to 3% per game on average. That's 33 to 50 games of Gambit. Gambit versus Gambit Prime didn't really yield too many differences in percentage points. We had to do 40 games for Breakneck, which was actually a very good auto rifle that has been since obliterated into the ground with Shadowkeep's release. Hopefully Bungie will fix that. And we've had to do a full Infamy reset for 21% Delirium. With Breakneck, you could just play games of Gambit for the most part, and with Delirium, you could speed things up with triple Infamy. With Exit Strategy, you basically can't be invading at all, because you'll miss out on moats, killing, and banking. And it seems like banking 5 moats is the fastest way to gain points, which means if you're playing solely to gain points, you'll be playing very inefficiently. which might make your teammates mad if you're solo. Plus, you know, it's Gambit. It hasn't really changed since my last video, talking about the problems with Gambit. Problem number 2 is that 2 of the best weapons in the game right now are submachine guns. One of them is Recluse. Yes, it did get a PvE nerf. It's still amazing for PvE, and it's still bonkers in PvP. The other is Huckleberry. Huckleberry's Rampage perk did not get adjusted in the same way that other damage perks did, making the gap between Huckleberry and Recluse much closer together, at least for PvE. Huckleberry in PvP is average at best, unless you happen to chain some kills together, which will be very rare, and you have the catalyst. But in PvE, the thing shreds. It always has. That's never really changed. Point is, they are incredibly strong PvE and Gambit weapons. Exit strategy has to compete against these 2 behemoths. Yeah. There are only 2 other 900 RPM kinetic SMGs, Trackless Waste, which is a Tangled Shore random drop, and Pillager, also from Gambit. So you could just random roll your way into a gun similar to Exit Strategy, although I'm not exactly sure on the perk pool. Don't get me wrong, Exit Strategy is not a bad weapon, but it suffers from the fact that there are 2 better guns out there already, and this should only be chased if you don't have either one of those weapons, are looking for a solid kinetic SMG, just really like Gambit, and or if you want the Season of Undying title, aptly named Undying. You need to get all 3 of the ritual weapons for the title, not to mention get all of the unique emblems from Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit via their quests, and run a 980 level Nightfall. But back to Exit Strategy, I don't think you need to put yourself through the 30 to 50 games of Gambit that it'll take for you to acquire this gun, especially if you have either Huckleberry or Recluse or both. Finally, Randy's throwing knife. This is probably the most difficult of the 3 weapons to get. The Vanguard one, you know, do strikes, no problem. The Gambit one, alright. I mean, you gotta go play Gambit and do PvE, but you'll get it done if you PvE hard enough. Randy's, you need to get enough wins in survival to get 2100 glory points. Not be 2100, just get 2100 points. You need a seemingly undefined amount of enemies defeated and medals, where it appears that getting cold fusion medals, aka 2 fusion kills in 1 life, seems to be the best way to get that done. And you need, count 'em, 1, 2, 450 final blows with scout rifles. Now, I grinded both the Mida and Jade Rabbit Catalyst, both of which required a lot of PvP kills and a lot of headshot PvP kills. I was not in that much of a hurry to go get another 450 or so scout rifle kills in PvP, but I did it anyway because I needed to make this video. I used Jade Rabbit for all of my kills. I did not use Mida, I did not use Black Scorpion. I grinded from 41% scout rifle kills and 52% medals to 100% in both in 6 hours, with the previous percentage points probably taking me around 4 hours or so. So 10 hours for 450 kills, 450 kills per hour at a rate of about 5 games per hour, a pace of the equivalent of 9 scout rifle kills per game, but you get a little bonus if you get multi-kills, and yeah, that sounds about right. Depending on how good you are with scouts, the average player is probably not going to want to suffer through 450 scout rifle kills in the Crucible. On console, things might be a little more manageable because the game's a little bit slower, but on PC, things are ruthless, especially with all but one Crucible option having skill-based matchmaking. Not to mention that when you do finally get the weapon, if you're not good with it, then you're just going to vault it straight away. Again, you will also need this if you want Undying. This is the only 260 RPM kinetic scout rifle in the game, and it comes with quite the perk suite. Rapid Hit or Snapshot, and Zen Moment or Kill Clip. Most people will probably be using Rapid Hit and Kill Clip. It's a very strong set of perks. Rapid Hit's bonus flows with Kill Clip. Perks 101. Scout rifles are still not super great, but they're being used a ton in the Crucible right now, I imagine, because of the hunt for this weapon. The gun is also full auto, which I did not actually realize while recording gameplay and getting some thoughts on the weapon, because I haven't used a rapid-fire scout in a million years, which may have been why I had the following take. I was underwhelmed with this weapon at first, anyway. We are still not really in a scout rifle meta, but 260 RPM scouts are the closest things are ever going to get to competitive for scout rifles, on PC anyway, as of this video. And if you want a 260 in the kinetic slot, this is all you got. This weapon is the champion of leaving people at 1 health. 47 damage per headshot means you're at 188 damage for 4 headshots. 63 on kill clip gets you 189 on 3 headshots. People will survive this very frequently, if not what feels like all of the time, and it's very annoying. Now, Titans with One-Eyed Mask, if you have kill clip and Vengeance, good news. It's a 3-tap at 66 damage per shot. Any damage buff turns this into a 3-tap with kill clip. However, Bungie has said that One-Eyed is targeted for an adjustment in the future, so that might go away depending on what they do. Would a 3-tap scout like this be a game breaker, or a 4-tap with no kill clip? It feels like it would be, so perhaps that was the right call. You'll see me hit 3 taps a couple of times in this gameplay, and it feels like it would be pretty strong even if the conditions are short-lived. It took a little while for the weapon to grow on me, and towards the end of my play session, I was learning what I was and was not capable of doing. I definitely want to play with it a bit more now that I've gotten used to it. Is it worth grinding? Well, it took me 10 hours, and I'd say I'm a little above average when it comes to PvP. If you're worse than me, it's gonna take you longer. The question is, do you want to spend a dozen or more hours using scout rifles and getting miscellaneous medals and points in the Crucible just to use this gun? It's a good gun, don't get me wrong. Is 15 to 20 hours in the Crucible using scouts worth it? I'll say that if I wasn't doing this video and I wasn't chasing a title, then I probably would have spared myself the effort. Perhaps a day will come where Randy's becomes the meta due to whatever changes happen in the future. It's a good weapon, it's a unique archetype, but I would say grab a Black Scorpion Energy Scout first from the gunsmith and try it before you buy it. This brings us to the Pinnacle versus Ritual weapon situation. Well, you see, Bungie kind of realized, or I imagine they realized anyway, that making Pinnacle weapons was sort of, you know, busting the game on occasion. Mountaintop and Recluse ring some bells there. Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten also say hello, although their nerfs are more hotly debated. These weapons were so powerful that they were game-breaking, mainly Recluse and Mountaintop, with Luna's and Not Forgotten not being terribly far behind according to some. They are a massive power creep issue. If you wanted to make something that was better than already game-breaking weapons, you would need to create yet another game-breaking weapon. So, while I'm sad that we don't have these really insane weapons to go hunt down every season, I'm glad that hopefully these weapons will not be a problem like Recluse and Mountaintop will continue to be until they're just removed from the game. Have I mentioned how much I love Mountaintop Recluse? The unfortunate side of things is that because we had a year already of Pinnacle, top quality weapons that can still be used, the new Ritual weapons are going to fall in between Pinnacle weapons and just generally well-rolled items in terms of how strong they are. If you don't have Pinnacle weapons, then some of these might be interesting to you. But if you don't want to kill upwards of 20 to 30 hours for all 3 of them, then most well-rolled weapons will do the trick with basically no problems. Those are my thoughts on the Season 8 Ritual weapons. If previous season weapons did not exist already, then all of these would be pretty darn good. but as it stands, they are above average weapons that unfortunately need to compete against some of the most ridiculous stuff we've ever seen in the game. I'd say Randy's is probably the most interesting of the weapons to hunt because of its limited archetype, but it's also by far the hardest to get. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you next time.